They say dinner is the time families come together, but for me, it became the stage for betrayal, lies, and a revelation that changed everything. What started as a normal evening with my wife ended with a knock on the door that turned her carefully crafted facade into a nightmare. This is the story of how one dinner exposed it all. I always thought my marriage was solid, one of those steady, dependable relationships where you didn't have to question if the other person had your back. We weren't perfect, of course. Nobody is. But there was this sense of understanding between us, this unspoken bond that made the little things in life feel meaningful. I remember how we used to laugh over the silliest things. We'd sit on the couch, sharing stories from our day, sometimes until midnight, completely losing track of time. I'd tell her about my work, and she'd listen, asking questions that made me feel like what I did mattered. She'd share her dreams, big ones, small ones, and I'd sit there, amazed by her passion. Those were the moments that made me think we were untouchable. But now, looking back, I can't help but wonder, was I blind? Did I miss the signs early on? Or did they only start appearing when it was too late to fix anything? It started slowly. Our conversations, which used to flow naturally, began to feel forced. I'd ask her something, and instead of really engaging, she'd be scrolling through Instagram or watching TikTok videos. I'd catch glimpses of her laughing at something on her screen while I sat there, waiting for her attention. It hurt. It felt like I was competing with a phone for the person I'd promised to spend my life with, and losing. Then there was her appearance. Don't get me wrong, she's always been beautiful, and I've always loved that about her. But she started putting in a level of effort. It wasn't just looking good, it was looking perfect. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. After all, who doesn't want to look their best? But something about it felt different. She'd spend an hour getting ready just to run errands. I'd ask where she was going, and the answers were vague, just out to get some things for the house, she'd say. And then there was the lack of intimacy. She started coming up with excuses to avoid being close. First, it was, I'm too tired. Then, I'm not in the mood. Eventually, she stopped giving reasons at all. 3 months passed, and she didn't let me touch her once. It was like I wasn't her husband anymore, just someone she lived with. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what had gone wrong. Was it me? Was I not enough anymore? I wanted to believe it was just a phase, that maybe we'd work through it. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. That's when the questions started eating at me. Was it me? Was I boring now? Was work pulling me away too much? But no matter how much I tried to figure it out, the answers just didn't come. All I knew was that something was shifting. You don't just wake up one day and decide to spy on your wife. It's not a choice anyone wants to make. But when you feel like the person you love is slipping away and the answers aren't coming, you start to do things to get the answers. It started with an idea, a desperate one. One day, when my wife left her phone charging in the living room, I noticed the device was unlocked. My phone was in my hand, and the thought hit me. I synced our phones so I could track her location using the Find My app. She never noticed. It was seamless. For days, I checked it whenever I could. Nothing seemed unusual. She was either at home, at work, or at the grocery store. A part of me started wondering if I was just being paranoid. But then again, she had been acting so different. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. A few weeks later, I had my chance to dig deeper. She left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter while she went to get something. I picked it up immediately. At first, her messages looked normal, conversations with friends, family, co-workers. But then I found a thread with no name, just an initial, N. Most of the conversation was missing. It was like reading a book with the first half of every chapter ripped out. Still, what was left told me enough. There were messages like, same time tomorrow, and I'll meet you behind the mall at 2. That last one hit me like a brick. The mall. The same one where we used to shop for groceries together. I scrolled through the thread, hoping for a context that didn't mean what I thought it did. But the emojis, the timing, the tone, it all screamed something. I decided to take it a step further. I tracked her to the mall by 2 p.m. I parked my car near the mall and waited. I didn't know what I was expecting to find. Maybe I was still hoping I was wrong. Then I saw her. My wife, the woman I had trusted with my life, walking toward a hotel entrance behind the mall. She wasn't alone. The man with her was tall, confident, and smiling. My world, however, was falling apart. I stayed in the car, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard. Confronting her there and then wasn't the answer. I needed to know who he was, what I was really dealing with. So, I waited until they went inside, then drove away, my mind already racing with plans. I wasn't going to let this slide. I was going to get every piece of the truth, and I wasn't going to let her see me coming. I couldn't stop thinking about the man I'd seen with my wife. His face was burned into my mind, a man in his mid-30s, well-dressed, confident, but I needed to know who he was. If I was going to confront this situation, I couldn't go in blind. So, I started with the basics. I'd already seen his car parked outside the hotel, so I memorized the license plate number. The next day, I used a contact of mine, a guy who worked in vehicle registration, to trace the plate. It didn't take long before I had his name, David Miller. With that information, I went online. Social media, public records, anything I could find. It was surprisingly easy to dig into his life. His Facebook profile was open, filled with pictures of him smiling with a woman, his wife, and a baby who couldn't have been more than a few months old. His Instagram? More of the same. Posts about family first, captions about being a proud dad, and photos of date nights with his wife. I sat there staring at my screen. This guy wasn't just some random fling for my wife. He had a family, a life, people who depended on him. And here he was, sneaking off to a hotel with my wife like it was nothing. For a moment, I felt conflicted. Angry, yes, but also sad. This wasn't just about me anymore. His wife, did she know? Did she have any idea what he was doing behind her back? And what about that little baby? It hit me hard. This wasn't just about a betrayal between me and my wife. It was bigger than that. This affair had ripple effects on his family, on mine, on everyone who trusted us. And as much as I wanted to hate him, part of me felt a strange pity for him. He was risking everything. His marriage, his relationship with his child, his reputation, all for what? A few stolen moments with someone else's wife. But then, that pity turned into resolve. If he was willing to play with fire, I'd make sure he felt the heat. It was time to use what I'd learned, and I knew exactly how to start. I remember sitting in my car, staring at my phone, debating whether I should send a message. I'd already seen enough to confirm my suspicions. My wife was meeting someone else, a man I now knew was married with a newborn baby. His name was Michael, and I had his face, his name, and everything else I needed to pull the rug out from under him. I typed the message carefully, making sure it was short and direct. Michael, I know about you and my wife. We need to talk. If you want to avoid things getting messy, respond now. Within minutes, the typing indicator appeared. He replied with a single word. Who's this? I could almost sense the panic behind his screen. I sent him a picture of his car parked outside the hotel they used. That was enough. He immediately called me. Who are you? He asked, his voice shaking. You already know who I am, I replied calmly. I'm the husband of the woman you've been meeting at that hotel. And I know everything. He stammered, trying to deny it at first, but I cut him off. Don't waste my time, Michael. Here's the deal. I have enough proof to expose you to your wife and everyone else. But I'm not interested in ruining anyone's life right now. What I want is for you to stay away from my wife. If you don't, I'll make sure your wife knows everything. Understand? There was silence on the other end. I gave him a moment to process before adding, I'm not asking, Michael. This is how it's going to be. He agreed. Of course, he did. Men like him aren't prepared to deal with the fallout when the tables turn. The days that followed were interesting. I didn't confront my wife about what I knew, but I started noticing changes almost immediately. She stopped rushing out of the house. Her phone wasn't glued to her hand like before. She began spending more time at home, offering to cook meals or asking if I wanted to watch something together. It was subtle at first, but it was clear Michael had cut things off. Without him as her distraction, She was trying to act like everything was normal again. But for me, it wasn't normal. I wasn't just going to let her get away with it like nothing happened. I needed a plan, a way to confront her that she'd never see coming. Something definitive, something that would make her realize I wasn't a fool. When she told me she was planning a special dinner for the two of us, one morning as I was about to step out of the house for work, I knew the opportunity had presented itself. She was trying to make up for everything, probably thinking I was clueless about her affair. But I wasn't clueless. While at the office, I reached out to Michael one last time. "I need you to show up at my house tonight," I told him. "What? Why?" he asked, panic creeping back into his voice. "I told you I don't want to make this worse. I just need you to come over so we can settle this once and for all. Don't tell my wife. Just show up. Trust me, you'll want this over as much as I do." He hesitated but agreed, probably afraid of what I'd do if he refused. That was all I needed to set the stage. Now, all I had to do was wait for the dinner and the confrontation to unfold. I walked into the house that evening, and for a moment, it felt like I had stepped into the past. The smell of roasted chicken filled the air, candles flickered softly on the dining table, and there she was, my wife, wearing a dress I hadn't seen in years, her hair styled just the way I used to love it. "Welcome home," she said with a bright smile, walking up to me and wrapping her arms around me. It caught me off guard. I hadn't felt that kind of affection from her in months. For a second, I almost believed it. Dinner was already set, 2 plates beautifully arranged, and she was fussing over every little detail. She even poured me a glass of wine. "You've really gone all out," I said, taking my seat. She smiled, brushing her hand over mine. "I just wanted tonight to be special." If only she knew. Just as we were about to eat, the doorbell rang. She froze for a moment, glancing at me. "Are you expecting anyone?" she asked, her voice light but slightly nervous. "No," I said, shaking my head and leaning back in my chair. "Maybe it's a delivery or something." She got up, smoothing her dress, and walked to the door. I stayed at the table, sipping my wine and watching her from the corner of my eye. The moment she opened the door, her entire body tensed. "Why are you here?" she whispered, her voice barely audible but laced with panic. From where I sat, I could see him, her lover. He stood there awkwardly, shifting on his feet, holding a bouquet of flowers like a fool. I set my glass down and called out, "Don't leave him at the door. Invite him in." She spun around, her face pale as a ghost, her eyes wide with shock. "Come on in," I said again, standing up and walking towards the door. "Don't be shy. After all, we are all familiar here, aren't we?" Her lover stepped inside hesitantly, his eyes darting between me and her. He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't give him the chance. "Have a seat," I said, gesturing to the table. "My wife prepared a lovely dinner for us." "James, I can explain," my wife stammered, her voice trembling. I turned to her and said her lover's name. "Michael, isn't it?" She froze, her hand clutching the back of the chair. I saw the realization wash over her, how much I knew, how long I'd known. "I've done my homework," I continued, my voice calm but firm. "I know about the texts, the meetups, the hotel behind them all. I know everything." Michael opened his mouth again, but I raised my hand. "Not a word from you. You've done enough damage." I turned to my wife, who stood there, her face crumbling under the weight of what she'd done. "It's over," I said simply. "You can go with him if you think he's better than me. You clearly made your choice months ago." "James, please," she begged, her voice breaking. "It wasn't. I didn't mean." I cut her off. "Don't insult me by pretending this was a mistake. You had every opportunity to stop. But you didn't. So now, we are done." I pulled out a folder from my bag and placed it on the table. "I've already started the divorce process. The papers will be ready soon. Make it easy on yourself and sign them when they arrive." Michael shifted uncomfortably, as though he wished he could disappear. I sat back down at the table, looking at the food she had worked so hard to prepare. I wasn't hungry anymore. You know, trust is such a fragile thing. It takes years to build, moments to break, and sometimes a lifetime to repair. When I married my wife, I believed in her, in us. I believed that no matter what life threw our way, we'd face it together. But betrayal doesn't just come out of nowhere. It starts with cracks. Cracks in communication, cracks in honesty, and cracks in respect. I saw those cracks, and I ignored them for too long. Walking away was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most necessary. It wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about choosing myself, my dignity, and my peace of mind. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and without it, you're left standing in ruins. Now, I want to hear from you. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Do you think I made the right choice? Share your thoughts in the comments. I really want to know. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and share it. Let's keep the conversation going, because stories like this remind us that we are never alone in our struggles.